Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Cooking for the Family. I'm Dyvonne, and today I'm going to share with you how I make an all butter crust when I'm making my apple pie. So this is how I do it. I'm using 2.5 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. You can also use regular all-purpose flour as well. Now when it's time to scoop in the flour, I like to use a spoon, and you want to aerate your flour so that way you don't get too much flour packed into your measuring cup. Then you're going to end up with more flour than what you need. So be sure to spoon your flour into your measuring cups. Now when it comes to making a flaky pie crust, I'm going to share with you a few techniques that you may or may not be familiar with when it comes to making a nice flaky pie crust. And these are things that I learned from my mom and from my aunties. I have my 2.5 cups of flour. I added 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I added a half a teaspoon of salt. Go ahead and give it a good stir. I like to use either a wire whisk or either a fork. Works well. This is going to be a double pie crust, so you can make the apple pie like I'm making, or you can make 2 separate pies if you're going to make 2 different kind of pies. But this is how the butter crust comes out. Now next I'm using unsalted butter. It's important that you want to use unsalted butter when making the butter pie crust because we already put salt in our base for our crust. Now I have nice cold butter from the refrigerator, and then I use my bench scraper, and I'm going to break this down into about nickel-sized pieces. Okay, so we're going to break this down into nickel-sized pieces. And this is 1 cup of butter that we're using. The crust comes out buttery and it comes out nice and flaky. And so once I've gotten it broken down pretty good, then I'm going to take this, I'm going to put the cold butter in with my flour. And again, that's 2.5 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar, and a half a teaspoon of salt. That is the base for a basic really good pie crust, and this is going to be a double pie crust. Now if you are new to my channel, welcome in, and if you're a returner, welcome back. I'm so excited. It is the baking season. I have some wonderful new recipes that I'm going to be sharing with y'all, so be sure to click that subscribe button and don't forget to click that notification bell. So once I have my butter in there, you see what I'm doing with my hands? You want to go ahead and you want to squeeze and press the butter. Now your butter is going to be very firm because it's cold from the fridge, and you want to do this quickly because you don't want the butter to start to melt in your fingers, but you do want to press it. And you want to use your thumb and your fingertips most importantly. By doing that, you're kind of like smearing the butter and the flour together. And so this creates that nice thickness that we need for the butter and the flour to hold together. This is also going to have some flakes in there as well for our dough when we roll it out. We're also going to be refrigerating our dough for 1 hour before we roll it out. And so you see how it is, how it's nice and it's flaky. We haven't added any of our icy cold water yet, but you see as I press the dough into my hand, how it's already starting to come together, and that's what you want to have happen. Now we're going to add some ice cold water. I've already actually added a couple of tablespoons. That was 2 more, so that was a total of 4 tablespoons that I added to my dough. And for this recipe, you'll need anywhere from 3 to 6 tablespoons. Now once you have your water in there, you see how I'm pressing? You want to press and gather your dough together in your bowl. Once it starts to pull away from the bowl, then you can go ahead, dump your dough off onto your surface, and you can use, like I'm using this silicone mat here that I like to use to roll my doughs out, but you can just use a nice clean countertop is what you want to use as well. And so once you have your dough and you've taken it out of your bowl, it's going to look like this. It'll be a little bit tacky. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to add a little bit of flour. That was a lot of bit, but you want to add some flour to your dough. And so that way, because we want to keep gathering it and pressing it together. Also, it's important that you don't want to add too much water because you don't want it to be, it can be tacky, your dough, but you don't want it to be sticky. And sticky is when it's like it's just too much liquid. There's a lot of liquid, and you don't want that. And so once you've pressed it together, then I divide my dough into our 2 discs. And I'm going to make them into 2 discs because this is the 2 pie crust, and so this is 1 pie crust and the other pie crust for our apple pie. Now once I've gathered and I've pressed my dough together, I go ahead and I make a round disc, and my round disc is about 1 inch high, a little bit around about 1 inch high. And so this is going to be how we're going to put our dough in the refrigerator, or put our dough in the refrigerator, so that way we'll be able to roll it out. If it starts to crack just a little bit, that's okay. What I'm going to do is when I put it in the freezer bag, I'm going to press it a little bit more and just make sure it's nice and tight and it's all brought together. And I'm going to let this chill in the fridge for an hour, or you can put it in your freezer and let it chill for about 15-20 minutes in the freezer. You can also do that as well. My dough has been in the fridge for an hour. I've taken it out. It's going to be very firm. I'm going to let it rest for about 10 minutes, and that'll give us a chance before we roll it out. Want to let it rest for about 10 minutes right on my countertop, and that'll give us a chance to go ahead and prepare our filling. So for my filling, I'm using Granny Smith apples. Normally I would be using some apples from my apple tree, but I've made a lot of apple recipes over the fall season, and so my apples the apple tree has given its all, and so I have some Granny Smith apples instead of my Golden Delicious from my tree, and I'm going to be using 6. Now what I also like to do is anytime that it calls for like a fresh fruit, you always want to get just a little bit more, just in case some of the fruit, like before, I've gotten apples from my tree or either from the store where you cut into them and they're just not any good. And so having 1 or 2 spare apples, you always want to get 1 or 2 spare apples. So for my recipe, you're going to use 6 Granny Smith apples. You can also use Golden Delicious or either Jonagold apples. Those work good. You want to peel and core them, and then after we've peeled and cored our apples to that, we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of regular granulated sugar, 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, make sure it's packed light brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of flour. Now in the description box below, I will have a list of all the ingredients you need for the apple pie as well as for the all butter crust. Next, I'm going to put in my cinnamon, and it's going to be 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Now I'm making this pie because I'm hosting. Some of my friends are coming over. I've got a dozen ladies actually coming over to my home this evening, and so I'm making a couple of desserts, and the apple pie is one of them. And I'm making a nice southern feast for them as well. Now something else that I like to add to my apple pie is ground nutmeg. So I'm going to put in a little bit of ground nutmeg, and this is 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, just like that. Go ahead, and we're going to mix everything together. And we had our 6 Granny Smith apples, our 1 tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice, our 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, our 1/4 cup of packed light brown sugar, 1/4 cup of flour. We have our 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and our 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And so once you have everything all mixed together and your apples are nicely coated, we're going to set this aside because the apples are going to start bringing off and giving off their juice right away. So we're going to set this aside, and I'm going to go ahead and quickly roll out our pie crust. And so our pie crust is still nice and cold and firm, but it's pliable enough that we're able to roll it out to a nice round circle. About 1/8 inch thickness is what you're looking for, about 1/8 inch thickness, just like that. And so once you have your pie crust rolled out, what I like to do is you can use parchment paper. If you have parchment paper, you can use parchment paper or wax paper to also roll out your dough. I have my 9-inch pie tin. It's going to fit perfectly. And then this is what I like to do in order to transfer. I take my pie tin and I put it upside down just like that, and then I flip everything over. And so what happens is then you can just gently pull back. I'm using my silicone pad. I can pull back my pad, or if you're using the wax paper or the parchment paper, and you see you just want to go ahead and just gently pull it from the top. Again, using that gentle touch, go ahead and just nestle your dough inside your pie tin, If you come across a little area that's a tiny bit tacky, it's a little bit tacky, what you want to do is just like I did, I put some flour and just kind of smooth out those areas. Go ahead and tap it around the sides as well, and just make sure that everything is just nice and smooth. Any tacky parts, I just go ahead, put that flour and then smooth it out. Now it's time to put in our filling. Now once you put in your filling, including any juice that's in your bowl, any of the seasonings, the cinnamon, the spices, all that, make sure you put all of that into your pie, and be sure to arrange your apples so that way you don't have more apples on one side of the pie than the other. Just kind of even them out a bit. You're going to use 1 pat of butter, which is basically about a tablespoon of butter, and you're going to dot the top of your pie with your butter. Now what I'm going to do is, while I'm rolling out the top layer of our crust, I'm going to put our pie in the refrigerator to chill. I've gone and rolled out the top layer just like I did the bottom. I'm going to do the same method of flipping my dough right on top, and so that way we have a nice even crust right on top, and just pull back just like that. Now while I'm doing this, I have my oven is preheating on 400 degrees, and our pie is going to bake from 50 minutes up to 60 minutes till it's a nice golden brown. So what you do is, once you have your top layer, you see how I go around and I press the two pieces together. I'm pressing them together against the rim of my pie tin, and then once I've pressed them against the rim, I use my kitchen shears, go around and I just cut any extra of the pie crust that's hanging off, that extra pie dough. We cut that, and actually it's usually enough for about an 8-inch tart, and so I'm going to save this. We don't waste anything, so I save this. I'm going to just put that in the freezer. And you can make pie crust ahead of time. I've made pie crust ahead of time, have it on a nice flat disc. I wrap it in saran wrap or just plastic wrap, put it in a freezer bag, and I put it in the freezer, and I can freeze it up to 6 months, and that's been great. And even ahead of time, like for the holiday season, make your pie dough a week or two ahead of time and then put it in the freezer and freeze it. So I've gone and I've crimped the edges, and so I put some egg wash. Our egg wash is 1 egg with 1 tablespoon of water. We put the egg wash all over, and I want to make sure that this is going to be nice and glossy, and that's what that egg wash is going to do. We also make sure that we go around the sides, the rim of our pie crust, and this is going to go great with the Southern feast I'm making for my friends. I've got some fried chicken that I'm making, some collard greens, I've got cornbread, making some candied sweet potatoes. I'm also going to make a pecan pie, so we got 2 desserts going on for the ladies tonight. I've got some baked macaroni and cheese. That's my mom's baked macaroni and cheese. And so also you want to make sure that you put some vent holes at the top of your pie so that way the steam will escape. In the description box below, I'll put a link to my Thanksgiving playlist that has a lot of those recipes that I mentioned today. Well, this is it. Our pie is out of the oven. I'm going to let it cool. I'm going to finish getting ready for my friends to come over this evening. I put a little bit of that raw sugar on top. That was an extra feature. You can add it or leave it out. That's up to you. Well, as you see here, our pie crust was nice and flaky, and the ladies loved it. Well, that is it for me today. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to show it some love. Give it a thumbs up. Click share. Share this video with a friend or family. And remember, it's always good when Dyvonne is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.